now too.
Alrighty. Good evening. My name is Jeremy Kitchen. I'm a librarian and writer in Chicago. I'm here today with Kyle Decker. Jim, is it Ruland? Jim, is that
right?
Yeah, and Daniel Weizmann. Jim and Daniel are from LA. Kyle's a fellow Chicagoan. They've all recently published books. The Last Songbird by Daniel, This Rancid Mill by Kyle, and Jim's Make It Stop. The first thing I want to talk to you about was the setting in LA. I know Daniel's book I don't think could have happened anywhere else. Just the way that the plot runs. I think Jim's could have been in other places. I think Kyle's could have been in other places, but I did want to talk about the LA setting. Kyle, you are a Chicagoan and you set it in LA, and I was wondering what was the reasoning behind that as opposed to doing it here?
There was a more of an abundance of documentation of it, so it made it an easier thing to research. Because when I first started out with the idea of having this novel about a punk rock PI, ironically enough, the idea actually got in my head from a Chicago band. Alkaline Trio has this song called Private Eye. And so the kind of concept of a punk rock private eye got in my brain sometime back in high school when I heard that song for the first time. I basically started out just reading as much punk rock nonfiction as I could. And just in terms of what was available to me, in terms of the research that I could do, the LA scene was just more well documented, it seems. So I wound up setting it there. Also, and Daniel and I had talked about this a bit in a previous co-interview that we did too, where there was a cultural shift that was going on in the LA scene around 1981, where it was getting a bit more violent, and the people who had originally founded it, especially a lot of the women and the queer community who were a part of it in the early days, were getting scared off by some of this violence. So having a character coping with that shift was interesting to me.
I think that happened across the country. It was, the original bands were a little artier, and it was like more everybody did it, and then that same thing happened to Detroit. By 85, the shows were terrifying. I was just a 15-year-old kid, so it was exciting to me, but looking back on it, it was just, it was horrible. Skinheads and had fights and violence all the time. And yeah, and I didn't mean to cut you off back there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, but there was a Hard Times article a while back that was it's a satirical newspaper, and one of the headlines they had was aging punk, strangely nostalgic about when you used to be, when you might have gotten stabbed, So.
Why? I mean, that's interesting to hear that that shift was going on in Detroit. What was it about those years that made that wave happen? Why did it happen?
When skinheads went from being working class thing into the bonehead neo-Nazi movement, that hit Detroit hard. Detroit has always been very racially segregated, and it's even more so than a lot of cities. I mean, Detroit's 92% black, and it's like,
right.
And but what was interesting is a lot of when there was white flight, the poor white people stayed behind. And when Henry Ford went to the South to recruit, he also went to Appalachia. So we had this big, self-proclaimed but hillbilly movement that came up too.
Interesting.
Yeah, there was a great record label called Fortune Records that put out hillbilly music and soul. So they did, a little bit. They call it the poor man's Motown. But I think the shift came when the skinhead movement started to get political and scary. So that's just from an empirical point of view from being a 15-year-old kid back then. But yeah. Jim, so you have a lot of roots in LA. I actually have read your biography with Keith Morris. I also read your SST biography, or not biography, but oral history recently. So you have long-standing ties, it seems like, in the punk rock community in LA. But you're not from there originally, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so what drove you to end up in LA and stay there and get involved in this movement?
It was really my connections to punk rock scenes, namely Flipside. And once I started writing for Flipside, now I had access to the music I loved. I was, this was in the 90s, so I was getting CDs to review. And then when I was interviewing bands, getting access to the bands and to the shows, and that just led to my passion for it. It's just being able to go. I mean, I grew up in Falls Church, Virginia, but when I joined the Navy, I ended up in San Diego and kind of bounced around after that. But I lived in LA for 10 years and lived in San Diego for another 15, 16, 17 years. And but you mentioned Keith, and that's really what led me to the SST book, for example, is that after hearing all his stories, I was curious to learn more. I lived for a while in Manhattan Beach. I guess I should say that. I lived in the South Bay, which is directly up from Hermosa Beach, and which is the birthplace of American hardcore, where Black Flag was founded and where SST started the whole mythology, the church, and all that good stuff.
Speaking of the church, I was speaking to Kyle last week, and the character of X-Head from Decline of Western Civilization picked up. But I will say my favorite from that movie is Eugene.
Yeah.
That's stupid punk rock. Yeah, I love that kid. And he always cracks me up every time. And then Daniel, you also wrote for Flipside, correct?
Yeah, I wrote for Flipside when I was
when it was good.
Quite young, 14, 15, 13, 14. It was a fluky thing where I was doing a fanzine of my own and I was stealing their photos because I didn't have a camera, and one day Al from Flipside called me up and was just like, I'll give you some photos. I have extra photos, or if you want, why don't you just write for us?
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't realize that about Jim, that's an incredible bond that we have through that.
Yeah, except you wrote for Flipside when it was good. I was writing in the late 90s when the magazine ballooned into like a little Bible, and it was really unpredictable schedule. I was part of that unpredictability because I never turned anything on time.
Was it still Alan Hudd running the ship?
Definitely Al, and then Todd was helping out. I don't know how much of I've never met Hudley, so I can't say, but I also only met Al a handful of times too. So Todd was my liaison. He's the one who would give me assignments and give me stuff, and then yell at me when I was late.
Yeah, I was noticing Jeremy has that Touch and Go anthology behind him, and I actually wrote the LA updates in some of those.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Just type it up and stick it in the mail,
I'll have to get into that after we're done. I love that book. I flip through it every once in a while. And so, Kyle, when you were doing your research, knowing Jim and Daniel, did you get into the Flipside archives while you were digging around for the
I found some Flipside stuff online in terms of like zine references. I found this like coffee table book that was just a collection of We've Got Power. And so it has like the original Xeroxes of a bunch of stuff in it, and then like actually like typed out, rewritten and stuff. So I read through a lot of that.
That's really beautiful, yeah. And speaking of Hudley, I think she produced a 10-year anniversary Flipside. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, it was originally print, but then she took the trouble of digitizing it, and you can actually get it on Kindle now.
Oh, okay.
And it's got some just wonderful things in it. I mean, I think that it's actually kind of cool that we all sort of come from that world, and yet now we're talking about these legit full-length books, because to me,
It's all legit.
yeah, I mean, exactly right, legit, you know, because like to me, like those that introduction to print was just so magical, and I'm sure there's some equivalent for kids today, but I wouldn't know what it is. For me, that was my magical introduction to the world of, you know, how you could write about something in your world, print it, Xerox it, and all of a sudden somebody else is reading it. So
I was cleaning out some stuff the other day, and I found some old business cards, some flip side business cards that had my nickname on it, which was Money, which I don't even remember why. It's an embarrassing nickname, but you know, Money, writer, photographer, flip side fanzine.
do not lose those. Those are worth a fortune.
Sorry, Daniel, did you have a shredder card?
I did not have a shredder card. For a while there, I did something which was so corny. I used to have one of those kind of pork pie. It's not a pork pie hat. It's like I guess like a fisherman's hat that you can turn up the back. So I cut the flip side. You know how it's like written in that flip side logo-y way, and I stuck it in the band of my hat, and I would go to shows like that, so people would know I was a real journalist.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I you know, we're going to get to the books in a second, but it is interesting what you brought up. I think Daniel and Jim and I are all, you know, I was 15 in 85, so I think we're close in age. And
yep.
It's just, I remember getting Flipside and Maximum Rock and Roll, and you'd like go through the zines and like you'd see a cool band name and order the 7 inches and the tapes. And you had no way to listen to them. Sometimes you won, sometimes you lost, but there was also, you know, we did a lot of zine and tape trading, like with Flint and Toledo, Kalamazoo, Michigan. So there was also that. And that's how we learned about everything. And it's in some ways, I feel like now, and this is my old fart coming on, but it's almost like cheating. You know, it's like, you know, you don't have the right to, you know, listen to all these things that were impossible to find. And of course, I'm being facetious, but I think that, you know, the research Kyle did, you know, obviously would have been impossible in 85. And it's great that it's archived and that people have access to it, but it's just, sometimes I don't think the younger generation just realizes what a different world it is, you know, especially for research now.
I mean, I'm the youngest person here, but even I remember having to drive to the library to do research. I learned how to use a card catalog. You know, like if I were to describe that, it's like, oh, when you go into the library, you'd have to see if they had the book in stock on an index card, and kids would like, I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I have an old library card catalog at my house, so it's
sweet.
Yeah. All right, so let's get in the books. I want to start out with Daniel's book, The Last Songbird. Also, it's a series, Pacific Coast Highway Mystery. You have another one coming out called Cinnamon Girl next year that I read about. How did you is our Uber driving detective going to be in the second one as well, or is it going to be a whole new deal?
Yeah. He's the only difference, I guess, professionally is that he's taking an investigator's course now at Antioch. But he has not yet in the second book put in his, I think you have to do 2,000 professional hours working for a lawyer if you actually want to get an investigator's license. So he's still a total amateur. Now,
didn't he have an old investigator's license in this novel?
He was working toward one briefly, you know, do serving papers and stuff like that. You know, I mean, what real investigators in the real world do, a lot of it is, first of all, it's somewhat mundane. You know, it's like getting, what do they call them? Like sub rosa videos of people, you know, like this guy's claiming that he has a back injury, but here he is going to play tennis, right? Yeah. You know, so that's one thing they do. And then also nowadays, a lot of it, which I don't find very exciting to fictionalize, but a lot of it is data mining. You know, it's just being on the computer and trying to figure out where this guy was Tuesday, 4:30 p.m., you know.
I did a data mining thing, like just by accident once, like my own private investigation thing. It wasn't like professional or anything, but that's kind of what it is now. You know, is it's a lot of stuff that's on the computer, you know, and so not to, I just kind of want to jump in with this story while it's actually kind of relevant because I think it's sort of interesting. I had, you know, met this girl, like this was 11 years ago, this is 2012. I had befriended this girl online and everything, and she was diabetic, and she was following this band around on tour. And then she started having these really erratic Facebook posts one afternoon, and everyone was really worried about her. And what had happened was the little travel cooler that she had for her diabetes medication had like shorted out or something. So she was actually like having this diabetic and heat stroke induced psychosis at a rest stop in like the middle of Nebraska or something like that, like middle of nowhere. And no one, she doesn't know where she is really. No one knows how to find her, but she had posted these things via her phone. So Facebook has a little thing that kind of tells you, okay, where this mobile post pinged from. And so I knew what band she was following because she and I had talked about it. I was like, okay, well, where did this band play last night? Where are they playing tonight? What highway connects those two cities? What rest stops are between these two cities that are near this, where this could have pinged? And then I like was looking up rest stops. I found a phone number for this rest stop, and I was able to get in touch with someone who worked at like the office at this rest stop. Fortunately, it was a rest stop that had like an indoor area and office. And I was like, hi, yeah, this is gonna sound like a weird question, but is there a girl with a young woman with pink hair, like waiting out in your parking lot? And they're like, yeah, she's really disturbing people. I'm like, you need to call an ambulance right now for her. And like, well, we really don't want to get involved. I'm like, let me rephrase that. Call her a fucking ambulance right fucking now because she's diabetic. Something went wrong with her meds and she needs medical attention now. So they called her an ambulance and she was able to get to the hospital and all of that. And it was really wild, but it was just like using this technology and this data to like, you know, to solve this sort of like mystery, essentially.
That's great. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, again, that couldn't have happened when we were coming. You know, you can't not Dish. What band was it, or can you not say?
It was The Life and Times was the name of the band.
Okay, not familiar. Anyway, so Daniel, Ann Linden is a folk singer in LA. She's older, has a very large fan base, but from my impression was kind of corny in her later years, like her older albums. Is that a correct analysis? Is found murdered, and our hero, Addie, is her Uber driver who decides that he is going to solve the mystery of Ann's murder. I just be, you know, I don't want to cause any spoilers or anything, but was Anne based on anyone?
I would say that she's based on a whole subcategory of women, you know. I mean, that, and for me personally, that category starts with my mom and my aunts,
okay,
you know, who were first generation beatniks and used to hang out with Carl Solomon and Ginsberg and stuff. But it's a cultural strain, a kind of American woman, you know, that, you know, goes down through obviously Stevie Nicks type people, you know, but I actually think I think that there would not be anybody under the age of 60 that would be like that, because I think that those women were really 20th century women, and I think that they were revolutionary in a 20th century kind of way. They were doing what they were doing very much against the grain of what people expected a woman to be. You know, Ricky Lee Jones was another person that I thought of frequently when I was trying to write her, and also the Wilson sisters from Heart, you know. Um, but kind of without what, like today we have identity politics, and we have a higher level of consciousness about these things, you know. And when I think of like somebody like Juna Barnes or some of the beatnik women, you know, some of the women that ran with the beats and stuff, they were kind of in this weird middle zone where they were like, they were not yet fully realized feminists or whatever, and yet they were challenging the roles just by what they were doing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, you think of like Diane DePrima. No one knows who that is. Everyone knows who Kerouac is. Everyone knows who Burroughs is, and yeah, I understand that. I had a, and it's only because I'm a huge fan. Is I was thinking like Nancy Sinatra. It was like my. I'm a absolutely. I used to have all her vinyl, all her posters, a lot of vintage stuff that I collected.
I saw her perform at BB King's in New York once, and she did the most amazing thing. I've never seen a performer do this before. She pulled a Bob Dylan Highway 61 Elvis Costello this year's model. When she walked out on stage, the first thing she did was started taking pictures of the audience.
Was it 90s? Probably like 96. I saw her too. Yeah.
Yeah. It was mind blowing. I was like, that is awesome.
She toured. I mean, she posed in Playboy, and then she was like 60, and then she toured. I went to that too. And Lee Hazelwood was hammered. He couldn't remember any of the lines. He came out was trying to. So why the Pacific Coast Highway Mysteries? What inspired you in your writing process to start this series? And obviously, the second novel is the title of a Neil Young song. Are we continuing along with the music mysteries?
Yeah, I think the series will always be in some way connected to music and the music biz, because it's what I know most, and also what I'm most passionate about. And it's Pacific Coast Highway because I see that terrain as very mysterious. It's the end of the line, you know. And the funny thing about PCH2 is, like, even with gentrification and money and it being all, you know, carved up and mass market and whatever else it is, it's still Pacific Coast Highway, and it's still weird, you know. So yeah.
So I'm going to move on to Jim, and we'll kind of bounce around if you guys want to interject at any time. So Jim, your new novel is called Make It Stop. It's on Rare Bird. It's ironic. They put out a a ginormous coffee table book about William Vollmann's transition. And they've been working on it for like 2 years, and they finally got I pre-ordered it like in 2021, and it came today, and I was like, oh, that's so random. Great, though. I'm a big fan. So your novel, you know, I think in a way takes on the healthcare industry in America, and you know, and particularly the recovery aspect. I've read a lot of things about like the Florida Shuffle, where they just kind of shuffle people around from like recovery home to recovery home and get the money through the insurance companies. And then this one, it's a little different. So if you don't pay your bill, you have to stay. And then they experiment on you with this lovely little drug called Bliss. Where did you come up with Bliss? Although, you know, with this trank stuff that's going around, the fentanyl animal tranquilizer stuff, I mean, I've never seen anything so debilitating. When I'm driving, you know, when I work on the south side and I live on the north side, sometimes when I drive to work, I go through the west side. I've never seen anything like it. What was your creative process for coming up with this Bliss and taking on this industry that is so dysfunctional?
Yeah, well, the book, just to back up a little bit, I mean, it's a near future story, so it's set in a recognizable LA, but kind of like the day after tomorrow. And So with the people, like if you don't pay your hospital bills, you don't get to leave. And the people in Make It Stop are a vigilante group that bust people out of these prison hospitals. And a lot of that was inspired by, my own recovery and the struggles I've had over the years and struggles to write this book. And I think I probably would have given it up if it wasn't about recovery, because what would that say if I give up on a book about recovery? I mean, that would not bode well for my own. But so it's kind of like this, like very dark near future, but also hopefully darkly humorous. And being in recovery, I love reading books, especially these kind of Black Mirror, day after tomorrow type of books where there's a new drug, where the writer invents a drug. And I just like wonder, like, wow, I wish I could try that drug. And knowing that it's like cheating, because knowing that I can't, I can kind of fantasize about it a little bit. And so I wanted to have a drug too. And at one point during the composition, there was a story in Vice that was making the rounds. There's always a new story about a new drug, right? And it was like kind of right in between fentanyl and bath salts was this drug in Russia called crocodile. You guys remember this?
Yeah, I remember
I
reading
have, yeah.
And what was appealing to me about that is that it was this drug that people were kind of making themselves out of ingredients from all-night pharmacies and Russian pharmacies that were did not have the restrictions that U.S. pharmacies had, and it was just made out of this garbage, and it would have the most terrible effects on people, but it was still not enough to stop people from doing it. And
Melting people's flesh, wasn't it?
oh yeah, I mean they called it crocodile because it would just like you just have these these sores. I was telling Kyle earlier that I'm reading this book about surgical practices in 19th century Scotland, and it's very similar. It's just as macabre and horrendous, and even in 19th century Scotland, hospitals were so bad that if you couldn't pay for your burial services when you're admitted, they didn't let you in. So maybe our future hospitals look more like our past. But so I came up with Bliss, and I just kind of needed it to kind of as a device to lend more of a ticking clock, to lend more urgency, and that, like, as we know, like from watching, the Bush administration and the Trump administration, like that, corruption, the sands of corruption kind of go like through an hourglass, and then a decade had passed, and like, holy shit, look where we are. You don't really notice it's happening. So I wanted something that would speed it up and lend some more urgency, and so that's where my my fantastic little horrible drug Bliss came in.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was dystopian, but to me it was so relevant. Like I could see this happening, and a lot of times you think it's like 20 years down the road, but I mean, I could relate to what was going on in the book in the present. And it's funny too, I'm also in recovery, and I emailed Jim because I was like, are you in recovery? Because there were some things that some of the language you used in the book, and I've been doing it for about 19 years now, and congratulations on your recovery as well.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you. And then we have, last but not least, Mr. Kyle Decker with his book, This Rancid Mill. So what was your creative process? How did you come up with Mr. Alex Damage and his quest as a detective in LA?
Well, Alex Damage is sort of, he's very much an alternate reality version of myself, I feel. His sense of humor, the way that he talks, his vocal tics are very much shared by me. And like when my mom was reading it, like I had my mom read an early draft of it. She's a big reader and a teacher, so she's always willing to give some honest feedback. And so she was saying she had to put it down a lot just because she felt like she's reading the scene. There's like a scene in it where Alex is tortured horrifically, and she kind of felt like that was happening to me. which I took as a compliment because, you know, one of the human beings on this planet who knows me the best is like seeing my voice come through in it. So that felt vindicating in a weird way. But
I wanted to interject really quick. As it's mentioned in the event, I have a book coming out in October, and I'm not even telling my mom it's being published because I don't want her to read it under any circumstances. Yeah, I wanted to throw that in there because my sister has it, my sister-in-law has it, my brother-in-law has it. I'm like, do not tell my mother. So
My mom is 93, and she is one of my most ruthless readers, and just in general a ruthless reader. She will you hand her a bestseller or whatever, she'll read the first couple of chapters and say, this is garbage, give me something else.
sorry, Kyle, I just had to interject.
Yeah, no, it's like the relationship that I have with my parents in terms of this is where I learned all of my inappropriate language from. You know what I mean? So that's I have like I'm not at all bashful about sharing my writing with my parents. I mean, like my father showed me Pulp Fiction when I was 10 years old. You know what I mean? So and I turned out fine, but you know, I wrote a lot of it when the Me Too movement was going on. You know, so I myself, very much like Alex, was trying to reconcile these unpleasant truths that I was learning about people that I admired. So Alex is, you know, the whole thing that he goes through and the reflection that this course is upon him was a lot of kind of what I was going through as a male during all of that, as a man during all of that. And it's just like, it caused me, very much like Alex, all of that caused me to sit back and like think about the way I've acted in the past and in ways that the things that I'm ashamed of and stuff that I need to learn from. And so, you know, I wanted to kind of have something, even though it's like set in the past and all of that, I wanted to have something that kind of felt still contemporary about it, that still felt relevant to things that were going on today, you know. And I just like the idea of a punk rock detective. He doesn't have a license, you know, he's very Matt Scudder in that way. But, you know, just the whole relationship and animosity that punks and police had towards each other also opened a window for him to find his niche of people who still need this sort of justice or need help in that way, but for various reasons can't go to the police.
Yeah, I grew up in a small town outside of Detroit, and you know, we were all punks in the 80s, and they would just see us walking around or with our skateboards or something and just pull up, throw us on the cars, you know, empty our pockets, you know, expecting to find whatever. We never had anything because we weren't that dumb. But yeah, you know, I wasn't obviously there, but in LA in the 80s, I you know, you hear about stories of shows and cops just coming with billy clubs and just, you know, I know Black Flag had a lot of interaction with the police early on, and it's baffling, you know. That's just like one thing about our culture that never really changes.
Yeah, the song, the Bad Chemical song, "Cop a Feel." It's actually a plot point in the novel. That was the first song that my brother and I wrote together when we were putting together like the Bad Chemicals EP for the book, and that came very easily because it's just, you know, it's all about the whole stop and frisk thing, but it has this like obviously this very satirical undertone to it and a lot of like wordplay in it, but that definitely needed to be a theme in it. And again, it's like that's something that has never stopped being relevant.
And Jim, you had some real nasty what were the police core? Were the police called the coring?
Oh, yeah, they were basically corporate cops, you know,
Yeah, the core, and those guys were real nasty. And the antagonist, his name begins with A, and it's escaping me. The main bad guy,
Hanson.
Didn't he have an apple white?
And Applewhite was his kind of his flunky.
Yeah, he was like, but he was also like his enforcer, right? Like,
Yes.
yeah. And those were some pretty brutal scenes. But of course, your protagonist was quite the badass. And do you want to talk about her a little bit?
Yeah, the main character is a woman named Melanie Marsh, and she's, struggling with her sobriety. And what happens is, not to give too much away, but when we meet her, it's a very, very bad day for her and for Make It Stop. And I kind of mirrored the vigilante organization, kind of off of some of like the groups that you meet in recovery, where like you'll have like these structures in place, but they're all run by like addicts and alcoholics. Like every meeting, no matter, it's all run by broken people. And that idea of like broken people helping broken people is kind of what animates the whole desire that's for these people to make it through this. And I think that's the magic of recovery too. But I'm always struck by those situations where this is a structure, or this is like the structure exists because we believe it exists, and as soon as we stop believing it, it doesn't. Like, you ever, like, nowadays it happens more and more with all the work shortages everywhere. You walk into a store and it'll be like three teenagers in like a Starbucks, and it'll be like, well, this place is just like 5 seconds from total anarchy at any moment, but everyone is acting like, I'm in a Starbucks, so I'm going to act like I do in Starbucks. Like, so much of society is like that. And I wanted to get to a point for these people in recovery that are like, no more. We're not going to take this stuff because, these hospitals and these policies, they're making us guinea pigs. And I specifically focused it on people in recovery because, who are the people that, that the broken people that nobody cares about, right? Homeless people having mental health crises, people who are addicts, alcoholics. Those are the society's most vulnerable people. So if like society starts legislating against them and putting them away in places, then who's going to really complain except the people that care about those people?
Yeah, I thought you did a great job with the Make It Stop vigilante folks because, as you know, in recovery, some of the people are damaged and flawed, and then somebody will do something that's, ridiculous, and people start talking about it. I'm like, everybody here's sick, man. Like, you can't expect to not, have some repercussions from that when you have a bunch of, 100 sick people meeting every week, and then, one of them does something that's like shitty or terrible, and it's like, did anyone not expect like something like this to happen? And I thought you did a very good job. Instead of like these vigilantes being like superheroes, they are very flawed, broken people, and these things would come out, as the plot progressed. And I think that was really well done.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So Daniel, I didn't want to give away too much about the last Songbird, but you said Addie's going to be doing the same thing. He's going to actually get his license for Cinnamon Girl. No longer going to be driving Uber.
No, he won't have a license yet.
Oh, okay.
He'll just be striving for it. But part of what happens in Cinnamon Girl is I try to do a little comic juxtaposition of like the beauty of being an amateur at something and really, having an adventure versus like none of the stuff he learns in class is going to be usable in any way, shape, or form because he's in the trench.
Real life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Most of the stuff I learned in my life was, from real life.
And in Cinnamon Girl, Addie is 37, which is substantially younger than me. So in Cinnamon Girl, he's doing a favor for a family friend, and he stumbles on a test pressing. And he starts to investigate because in the Run Out groove, which I did not ever realize was the technical term for it. I don't know if you guys know the run out groove. In the run out groove, you know, back in the day, people used to carve things like on all those Black Flag records. There's funny little things like coming at you or whatever, right? So and phone numbers too.
Spot did all those. Rest in peace.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's really
Oh,
really.
by the way, have you guys seen Spot's posthumous photography book that came out? I bought it. His photographs are amazing. I'm like, how? I didn't even know he was a photographer, and I saw it in an art book catalog, and I bought it. And just saying, if you get a chance, pick that book up. The photography is phenomenal.
Yeah, that is an incredible book. But anyway, so he starts investigating this kind of cold case that's attached to this test pressing, and that's all I'll say about it. But he's still an amateur, and he's still winging it.
That's really cool.
And then in the last songbird, it's cassettes. You know, where help solve the mystery. And
yeah,
also the when the woman was murdered, she had a cassette wrapped around her body. Correct? Am I remembering that correctly?
she had a cassette wrapped around her body. Yeah.
And Kyle, I wanted to ask you. You had a little true crime dashed into your novel with Eddie Nash and the Wonderland Murders. I'm a huge true crime buff. I have been since I was a kid. I'm the youngest of 8 kids, so like I got exposed to everything terribly young. And these zines that we were talking about, maybe not flip side, but like there was Murder Can Be Fun and all these Answer Me and these very politically incorrect zines that were floating around in the 80s and 90s. That's where I learned all my things, and I'm quite well versed in the Wonderland Murders and the John Holmes thing. But what made you decide to tie that in besides the time frame?
The original draft of this Rancid Mill, that was very much more tied in. In the original draft of it, Alex gets information from Eddie Nash's apartment by being part of the infamous Wonderland break-in, and then stumbles across the murder scene when he goes back to the Wonderland. I wound up cutting all that out and taking it back because the Wonderland thing is fascinating, but has also kind of been done to death. You know, I wanted to kind of make Alex's story a little bit more tangent off from that, you know, not so much like get wrapped up in that. But you can kind of see where it's starting to work towards that because this Rancid Mill is set very specifically in the first couple weeks of June of '81, like that first or second week of June of 1981, whenever Bad Religion played Club 88, you know. But I cut all of that out of it, you know, the thing. But like having real people in it gave it more of that historical fiction vibe. I wanted it because you know, Eddie Nash owned a bunch of the clubs and stuff that were connected to the early days of punk, like the Starwood and everything like that. So I wanted to bring him into it to sort of make it feel a little bit more real and not just have every character. I didn't want too many characters in it that were just like a stand-in for a real person. And considering that Eddie Nash and John Holmes makes an appearance in it, they're both essentially dead public figures, which gave me more options in terms of fair use.
Gotcha. Did you get your ass kicked a lot, Kyle? Because you said that that he was based on you, and Alex ass kicked. I was just curious.
No, not a lot. I'm really good at talking my way out of stuff most of the time. I got into a fight in middle school where I got the shit kicked out of me. And then I got sucker punched in the back of the head by a soldier in Korea after like separating him from his girlfriend that he was getting too aggressive with. And then one of my friends who was trained in martial arts snuck up behind him and choked him out like as soon as he hit me. So he was kind of like rad for me over there in a lot of ways.
I had a couple of tough. I was never tough, and
not me neither.
I also did a stint in the military, like Jim, except I was in the army. But like I always hung out with tough people, you know. So it was like we had like this crew of punks, and I wasn't tough, but the two of the guys were. So like, and I had a really big mouth, so I got my ass kicked a lot. That's why.
I did too, and it's funny. Like I was even thinking the other day that like just the act of writing crime fiction is like such a byproduct of getting your ass kicked. It's like I was writing one of those scenes, right? And I was like, maybe there's like some weird psychological reworking through, living through, getting your ass kicked, panicking. It's like an attempt to like redress those things. Like who normal person would ever like say, I can't wait to write that scene where my protagonist, who's basically a stand-in for me, gets the shit kicked out of him.
Alex tries to rationalize it at one point by saying, like, toughness isn't about the dishings you lick, it's about the beatings you take,
I think a lot of people that haven't had their ass kicked, like fights don't last long. It's like you see in the movies and they're like 5 minutes, it's usually like 20 seconds and you're, somebody's ripping you, off you or whatever. And I was
with me, it would be more like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
You walk me to the ground and then I'd watch you walk away.
When my buddy had choked the one dude out, it just come from a costume party. So he was dressed like Venom from the Spider-Man comics, which just made the whole thing wildly surreal.
We're getting shorter on time. I was going to ask all of you guys if you had anything in closing and what you're working on next. Why don't we start with you, Jim?
Yeah, sure. I have another novel. I've got a draft done, and it's also a crime novel. Not really. This time it's well, since Kyle just called all of our past historical fiction, I'll say yeah. Is 1993 historical fiction? Is that
yeah?
So
I don't know, 30 years. Yeah,
it's 30.
Maybe vintage fiction.
There you go. But it's about 4 English teachers that go on a crime spree in northern Arizona in 1993.
Sold.
Same. Yeah, man. Arizona's the weirdest state. I'm a huge White Sox fan, and I've gone out there for their spring training a couple times.
Oh.
I ran over a ginormous rattlesnake, and like, you go to the gas station, people have like 357 Magnums on their hip, and I'm just like, where am I? Like, what is this place? It's like,
yeah. When I went to school out in Arizona after being in California, and it's funny because in California, even back in the 90s, they didn't really care about weed. If you could be high, you could smoke weed as long as you're not, being too flagrant about it. But they would freak out about guns.
oh,
In Arizona, it was just the opposite. Everybody is carrying, and but if the pizza guy smells weed when he drops off the pizza, he might call the cops.
Wow. It's legal here now too. Did you ever get to see JFA while you were out there? Aren't they from Arizona?
I didn't. That was it was it was 1993.
Oh yeah,
I saw him open for the Bad Brains at Ukrainian Cultural Hall.
I've seen flyers.
They were amazing. They were the lead dude. I don't have to admit I don't know them intimately. I don't know their work intimately, but the lead dude came out wearing a big sombrero, and that just blew my mind. And the Brains did not play that night because the cops came.
I saw them in the 80s, and it was great. I've seen a lot of flyers from that Ukrainian. Was it a church or a hall? Or
yeah, it's like a cultural hall, because none of these bands could ever get booked in real clubs because their reputations preceded them. So they would like go to the next innocent space that they could try, and then of course after that it would never happen again.
Throw a show in her hall or something. Yeah.
Jim, I want to ask you, I'm sorry, just to backtrack to, is the story of the 4 teachers, is it true crime or is it totally fictional? Or
well, I was an English teacher in northern Arizona, and one of my colleagues that I shared an office with, there was 4 of us in an office with no windows and 2 desks. So we've kind of felt like the low people on the totem pole. except for this guy, because he was from Kingman, Arizona, and he was a power lifter and he made his own ammunition. He's just one of those Arizona characters, right? So he looks like a guy that you would not mess with. He sounds like a total right-wing guy, but he was not at all. He was and is a poet. And so he very much loved being an English teacher and thought it was like the greatest thing and was great with his students. But every once in a while, he would, we'd be in the office, he'd come in and it would be just the two of us. He'd be like, "Hey, Ruland, let's go rob a bank." And I never knew if he was serious or not. He was like, "Come on." It's like, we're English teachers. Who would suspect us?
Yeah.
And I was like, man, you're right. And so that's been rattling around in my head for
I
about
love
30
that.
years.
Love the premise. That's so awesome.
And Danielle, we were talking a little bit about your next book. You got anything else in the pipeline, or do you have any last words for us?
I'm working on a third story, but it's too early. You know, it's in that stage where anything I say will make me cringe, and then you will cringe.
If you cast it into the wrong words, then you can't get it back.
That's right.
Isn't that the scene in Barton Fink, right?
Yeah.
And then is it going to be a trilogy, or are you going to keep rolling from there, or you're not sure yet?
No limits.
I have some ideas, but I'd love for my guy to go to eventually go pro, but we'll see.
Cool. What about you, Kyle? What's on the pipeline? Last words for you tonight?
Yeah, Alex Damage has actually cropped up in some of my short fiction too. I have 2 published short stories with him. One was in Mystery Magazine back in March of 2022. And then there was one in Mystery Tribune in June of 2022. And I did write, I do have a sequel written. I sent off a draft to my publisher. They enjoyed it. We're still kind of like waiting to see how this Rancid Mill sells. So, and how, put some space on that. But hopefully that will be coming down the pike sometime in the next year or two. That one is tentatively titled The Once Over Twice. And it's a missing persons case. Obviously no spoilers, but like Alex is a little he's hiding out like out in the desert, kind of like in Slab City near an island, just until the heat in LA dies down, and just like hanging out with like hippies and other dregs, and he gets tracked down by Rad drags him back to LA reluctantly for a missing persons case. One of the Bad Chemicals guitarist, Reggie Reckless, no one's heard from him in over a week. And so Alex is like very reluctantly trying to figure out what happened to Reggie.
Just mentioning PM Press. Have you read any of John King's fiction?
I have not, no.
He writes about like really like disenfranchised like punks in the 70s in England and skinheads, kind of, I'm not going to say Clockwork Orange, but it's in that vein, just like rough stuff. I love his book. He's got books. He's got one called The Football Factory. PM Press publishes him. That's why I asked. I'm a big fan. I am going to do some shameless self-promotion. October 14th, I have a book release for Mr. Crabby, You Have Died at Quimby's. It's 7 p.m. October 14th. I'm sure Kyle can vouch for this. Quimby's is like a destination store in Chicago. It's all indie. It's like everything, and it's Liz, the manager there, is a Chicago institution, in my opinion. So if you're not doing anything, swing out there that night. And this is a really nice conversation. I'm looking forward to continuing the trilogy, The Teachers on the Crime Spree, and the next Alex Damage novel. It sounds all like good stuff. So thank you for asking me to be a part of this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeremy.
This was great fun.
Cool.
Yeah. What's is Mr. Crabby You Had Died? That's a short story collection?
Short story collection. I'm a Desert Storm veteran. I was an artillery observer out in during the war, and obviously had addiction and alcohol problems when I got back. It's fiction, but it's got a little bit of there's a little bit of autobiography in there. I hate the term auto fiction, but it is. That's what it is. It's fiction, but I'd say it's like 60% real. Yeah. There's some good stories too about punk shows in Detroit in the 80s. Well, there's one great one about GBH. I saw them at this total dive called Blondies, and my friend's stage dive, we chugged like 240s each before we went in, and he landed on his stomach and just blew chunks all over the pit, and it was like this tiny space, and it was like everyone had vomit on him, and it was GBH actually like stopped and asked if someone could like mop the floor. I mean, it was disgusting, but that's in there. So it's stuff like that, you know.
Jeremy, do you know Jimmy Doom?
Yes, I do. I just yes, I have his 100-story collection.
His new book, right on.
Yeah, or no, it's 300. He wrote a story a day for a year. Yeah, I do. I wouldn't say we're friends, but I know who he is, and I saw Almighty Lumberjacks of Death 100 times in high school.
On.
They always open for the big shows. So.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I did an event with him at Smalls and Hamtramck earlier this year.
I spent a lot of time at Smalls, actually. My grandpa's from Hamtramck. So, yeah. Cool.
Small world and getting smaller.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and they're very serendipitous day in that regard today too. You know, you
guys have a lot of connections with the other. You guys spoke with two women today, correct? And
Heather Augustin and Jen Larson. They both have some really cool books. Heather Augustin wrote a book. She's written a ton of books about ska music, and she just released a book called Rude Girls early this year. It's about women in the ska scene. And then Jen Larson just wrote a book called Hit Girls, and it's about women in the punk scene in the 70s and 80s, and but more obscure bands and stuff. I'm reading them both simultaneously right now, and it's interesting stuff.
I'll have to pick up Rude Girl. I know we have Hit Girls at the library, so cool. All right, well, I got to roll, but it was really a pleasure to meet you guys, and I'll keep an eye out for your books when they come out. So have a good night. Thank you.
Yep,
thank you, Jeremy. Nice chatting with all you guys.
Yeah. Same.
Safe home, Jim.
Thank you.
Yep, bye. Thank you for joining us.